If we stand together and do not allow Trump and his minions to divide us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation or our religion. If we stand together, we can defeat oligarchy, we can defeat authoritarianism, and we can create a nation and a government that works for all.
Señores, Donald Trump recibió un verdadero golpe político. En esta ocasión no fue desde un tribunal, sino que fue desde un escenario en un mitin. El encargado de darle esa sacudida fue nada más y nada menos que el senador demócrata Bernie Sanders. Esto lo hizo desde Carolina del Norte frente a una multitud eufórica que llenó el lugar como parte de su gira de Fight the Oligarchy, o bueno, para muchos, la lucha contra la oligarquía. Amigos, esta gira no es cualquier cosa porque Bernie Sanders ha estado yendo a estados y zonas que votaron por Trump. Ha estado hablando directamente con la gente que alguna vez creyó en él y dejando muy claro lo que está en juego: enfrentar a los oligarcas que controlan la política y la economía de este país. Y bueno, lo primero que quiero mostrarles, señores, es la energía que tenía este meeting. Veamos esto.
Let's welcome him to the podium because it's time to rise, to rise, to rise.
En uno de los momentos más potentes de su discurso, Bernie Sanders no se guardó nada. Señaló a Trump sin titubeos. Lo llamó un fraude, un farsante, un criminal, un delincuente convicto. Lo hizo con la fuerza de quien no le teme a las repercusiones, porque sabe que decir la verdad en este momento es más importante que medir cada palabra.
And Donald Trump comes into office and I am the champion of the working class. I just love workers. Well, this guy is not only a pathological liar, he is a fraud of the worst kind. When Trump campaigned for president, I don't recall him telling his supporters that he was going to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the top 1%. $900 billion in tax breaks to large corporations. I don't recall Trump telling his supporters that he was going to throw 15 million people, including many hundreds of thousands here in North Carolina, off of the health care that they have. And let us be clear, and this is not just me talking, there have been studies about this. When you throw 15 million low-income and working-class people off of the health care they have, when you cut back on the Affordable Care Act and force premiums to go up all over this country, do you know what happens? People die. That is the simple truth. And there have been studies out there, and it almost, I feel uncomfortable telling you this because it's so horrible, but it's true. There have been studies out there, Yale, the University of Pennsylvania, suggesting that when 15 million people lose their health insurance, when costs go up, 50,000 Americans a year will die unnecessarily. Thank you, Donald Trump. Trump did not campaign on taking free school meals for up to 16 million kids away from them. He did not campaign on doubling or tripling monthly student loan payments for millions of Americans who are already drowning in debt. But it's not just his big, beautiful bill. Trump did not tell his supporters that he was going to shut down Social Security field offices all over America, making it harder for the elderly and the disabled to get the benefits that they have paid for. He did not tell the veterans of this country who put their lives on the line to defend us that he was going to throw 83,000 employees in the VA out of their jobs, which means worse health care for our veterans. He didn't tell the American people that he was going to impose a $50 billion a year voucher program on America, which will go a long way to destroy public education in America. He didn't tell the American people that they were going to have to pay substantially higher prices because of his absurd tariff policies. In other words, what Trump has done is made a very bad situation worse. And I want to say, though, it's not just domestic policy that we have got to be concerned about. I am proud to tell you that I have led the effort in the United States Senate to end the funding of the Netanyahu war machine in Gaza. It is not acceptable to me or the overwhelming majority of Americans, whether you're Democrat, Republican, or independent, that in Gaza right now, 60,000 people have been killed, mostly women, children, and the elderly. 140,000 have been wounded, mostly women, children, and the elderly. Entire infrastructure, schools, healthcare systems, wastewater plants, water plants have been destroyed. And now, with U.S. taxpayer money, children are being starved to death. Not acceptable. We've got to change that.
Obviamente la cosa no se quedó ahí. Bernie Sanders siguió encadenando momentos muy fuertes en este discurso. Frases que hacían que la multitud estallara en aplausos y vítores. Cada palabra, señores, fue un golpe directo al ego trumpista. Un recordatorio para el público de que no se tiene que normalizar la corrupción y mucho menos la impunidad.
If we stand together and do not allow Trump and his minions to divide us up based on the color of our skin, or where we were born, or our sexual orientation, or our religion. If we stand together, we can defeat oligarchy, we can defeat authoritarianism, and we can create a nation and a government that works for all.
Y es que, amigos, clip tras clip solo vemos cómo Bernie Sanders refuerza su mensaje, que esta lucha no es solo de un partido, sino que es del pueblo contra una élite que ha manipulado las reglas solo para enriquecerse a costa de todos los demás.
But what else is going on in America? Well, we got two worlds. One, billionaires doing great. The other one, middle class, working class, low income people, so good. Today, in the richest country, again, this is almost unimaginable. In the richest country in the history of the world, 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck. Anybody here living paycheck to paycheck? Yeah. I grew up in a family living paycheck to paycheck. Anybody here dealing with stress every day, trying to feed your families, pay your medical bills, pay for your housing? Well, tens of millions of people are in exactly that same position. Today in America, again, the richest country in the history of the world, we have the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. Millions of Americans can't find affordable housing. Our educational system, from child care to college, is much too expensive and much too inadequate. Our healthcare system is completely broken. We got 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. In America today, half of older workers, people who have worked their whole lives, have nothing in the bank as they face retirement. 22% of seniors are somehow, I don't know how, trying to survive on $15,000 a year or less. We have, again, as the richest nation on earth, the lowest life expectancy of any major country on earth. You all know that? We live on average about 4 years shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. But here is what you don't know. And that is that if you are working class in America, you're going to live 7 years shorter life than wealthy people. Why is that? Why? Stress. Stress. Now, stress is the word. I held a hearing a couple of years ago, and we talked about poverty as a death sentence. You all know what I'm talking about? What it means is if you are working class in America today, and you wake up in the morning and you say, how am I going to feed my kids? Is the landlord going to raise the rent? And if he does, how am I going to pay it? Where am I going to go? Because there's no affordable housing in the community. What happens if my mom gets sick and needs prescription drugs that she can't afford? Or my kid gets sick? What happens if my car breaks down and I can't afford the $1,000 bill the mechanic tells me it's going to cost? And if I can't get my car fixed, I can't get to work. And if I can't get to work, I'm going to lose my job. And if I'm going to lose my job, what happens to my family? There are millions of Americans who are living that nightmare right now. And in the richest country on earth, that is totally wrong and unnecessary. But it's not only what's going on now. You know, when you see people in America angry and disgruntled, there is a reason why. And one of the reasons is that over the last 50 years, as you all know, there has been an explosion in technology, right? Every worker in America is far more productive, producing a lot more than that worker did 50 years ago. Now, one might think that with all of that increase in worker productivity, workers would be making more money, right? Wrong. Because over the last 50 years, real inflation accounted weekly wages for the American worker have gone down. There was a study that the Rand Corporation did, and it said that during that same period of time, there was a $75 trillion redistribution of wealth going from the bottom 90%, you all, to the top 1%. So here we are right now. In terms of basic necessities of life, the housing system, broken. Educational system, in terms of childcare, in terms of kids being able to afford to go to college, in terms of the pressure on public schools all over America, in deep trouble. Wages in deep trouble. Workers are going nowhere in a hurry. Housing, a disaster. People spending half of their incomes on housing, 20 million households, 800,000 people in America.
Y bueno, para cerrar el discurso, Bernie Sanders dejó a la audiencia un mensaje inspirador, uno que provocó una ovación de pie. La gente no solo aplaudía, sino que gritaba con fuerza, porque sentían que por fin alguien estaba diciendo lo que ellos piensan. Pero pues rara vez escuchamos en voz alta este tipo de palabras desde un escenario político.
The good news is that throughout our history, in very, very dark and difficult times, the American people came together, led by working class people, came together to take on incredible power and corruption, and they won. They did it then, we can do it now. In the middle of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln went to Gettysburg a few days after that battle where tens of thousands of soldiers died trying to end slavery in America. And he looked out onto the field and he said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Trump and his friends believe in a government of the billionaire class, by the billionaire class, and for the billionaire class. And that is not what millions of Americans fought and sometimes died for. So brothers and sisters, in this difficult moment in American history, in this unprecedented moment, we have got to respond in an unprecedented way. We need you. You can't sit it out. Sorry, I know it's tempting. You can't put your head over your covers over your head. We need you to join us in the struggle. Now, I don't have a PhD in mathematics, but I do know that 99% is a hell of a bigger number than 1%. Brothers and sisters, let's go forward. Let's take on these oligarchs. Let's beat them. Thank you very much.
Pues bueno, esto no es un evento aislado porque Bernie Sanders ya había hecho ciertas paradas previas en lugares como Virginia Occidental, llevando el mismo mensaje de resistencia y de acción política. Amigos, este hombre cada vez que toma el micrófono deja claro que no se trata solo de derrotar a Trump, sino de transformar el sistema que lo hizo posible. Ahora bien, amigos, quiero que pasemos a hablar del siguiente tema, y es que ¿hasta qué punto un presidente puede pisotear las bases mismas de la democracia sin que nadie lo detenga? Quiero que hablemos de este momento crítico en la historia de los Estados Unidos, donde podemos ver cómo el Senado, la institución creada para poder equilibrar el poder, está quedando reducido a ser un espectador, mientras Donald Trump está concentrando en sus manos todas las facultades que nunca debieron ser suyas. Y lo peor, con todo el aval silencioso, y a veces parecieran cómplices de los republicanos. Escuchemos.
Joining me now is Democratic Senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy. Senator Murphy, thank you so much for being here with me. There's a lot I want to talk to you about. I just want to start with, I kind of just gave my overview of what I see as this dictator, aspiring dictator. When did we just start calling him a dictator? Actions that include everything from this effort to militarize our nation's street, including the city that you and I spend a lot of time in, to go after private sector companies and try to control them, even to control the Smithsonian and institutions and what our history looks like and rewrite that. But how do you see this moment that we're living in and all of those Trump actions together?
Well, I think you've identified the real danger here, which is that the president of the United States is essentially operationalizing the White House and the vast power of the executive branch, an executive branch that, frankly, is more powerful than it was a generation ago, in order to compel loyalty from the businesses that he regulates and the citizens that he governs. And the Founding Fathers were very worried about this, right? They had watched the British king, for instance, use the power of the Treasury, use the power of taxes and tariffs and levies in order to keep an entire people subjugated. And so they created a division of labor in the federal government. And specifically, they gave the powers of taxation, tariff, and spending to the Congress and said, listen, it's up to the Congress, the branch of the government most rooted in the people, most connected to the people, to decide how money gets spent. The president is part of the executive branch because all he's supposed to do is execute the decisions that Congress has made. And so what is most worrying is that this Republican Congress has just outsourced the power of tariff, taxation, and spending to the president. Mm-hmm. And as you said, he is right now, as we speak, using it to crush dissent, for instance, pulling funding from colleges where there are anti-Trump protests, and compelling loyalty from the private sector to make sure that they line up and do his bidding. So, this is a creeping totalitarian state right now. It is not too late to stop our democracy from imploding, but we can't assume that if we just continue to play politics as normal, that we are going to end up with a free and fair election next November. This is happening really fast, and it's literally the playbook that our Founding Fathers worried about.
We're in such a unique moment. You've called this out so often, which I very much appreciate. And it can't use the same tactics. They're just not going to work. And you've worked in a bipartisan way many times in the past. I've known you a long time. I mean, to address gun violence prevention, to try to negotiate a bipartisan border deal. You're not somebody who has shied away from trying to find a bipartisan solution. But you are now going all in on boycotting negotiations regarding the government funding bill, which I think is very interesting, a very interesting tactic to take. That is a September 30th deadline for people who are just tuning into this. Most Democrats in your caucus, or you tell me, are not exactly in the same place. So why did you decide to choose this fight as one to take on?
Well, there was a headline today suggesting that I was boycotting discussions around the upcoming budget. That's not true. I'm simply saying that, Democrats have to come to the table with values, and we shouldn't give our votes away to funding a totalitarian state, right? Right now, the government is lawless. The president is not paying attention to the words that are written on the budgets we pass. And so if we're going to pass a budget and if we're going to provide Democratic votes, well, then, that budget has to actually be implemented. There has to be provisions that require that the president continue to live up to the law. And yeah, we wouldn't also be doing our job if we didn't put on the table some things that are about to happen to people in this country that are going to destroy their lives. Our healthcare system is about to go into meltdown. Premiums are going to go up for millions of Americans because of what happened in the previous partisan Republican budget bill. We have a chance to stop that. And this funding bill that we're going to debate in September, it's an opportunity to try to trim the lawlessness, but also to try to help people that are going to be screwed by the Republican attempt to throw people off of their health care. So I'm not boycotting anything. I'm just saying that we should fight as a party. And we should say to Republicans, no, we're not going to give you a blank check with our votes in order to fund a state that increasingly mirrors the kind of authoritarian regimes that we have fought against all over this world.
Yeah, and look, I'm glad. Thank you for the clarification on the boycotting. And that's a little, headlines are always a little off sometimes. They're not always, but sometimes they are. So thank you for that. But I think it's interesting. The reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because the way that it was approached by Democratic leadership in the spring was pretty disappointing. I mean, that was my view. There wasn't a huge fight back. It didn't seem that way. So what does the fight back look like this time? Because this is a stake. Republicans need Democrats to be a part of this negotiation to move it forward and keep the government open. So how does that work, and what does that look like to fight back?
Well, listen, I obviously, did not provide my vote for that, budget in the spring. But I understand that was a moment where the country was still, kind of shell-shocked by the way in which Trump was starting to seize control of the government. That was before Republicans passed their own budget bill that threw 17 million people off of their health care. The stakes now in the fall are, I think...
Un presidente utilizando el poder de la Casa Blanca para forzar lealtades, para castigar a quienes lo critican y de paso premiar a quienes se alinean solo con su agenda. Aquí no estamos hablando de decisiones políticas duras, pero legítimas. Hablamos de manipular fondos públicos, solo para poder silenciar el disenso, poder controlar instituciones que deberían de ser independientes. Esto es exactamente lo que los padres fundadores de Estados Unidos temían cuando hicieron la separación de poderes. Ellos sabían por experiencia, con monarquías y gobiernos autoritarios, que permitir que un solo líder maneje impuestos, maneje tarifas, maneje gastos públicos sin tener la supervisión es como abrir la puerta a un régimen totalitario. Y lo que estamos viendo hoy es que el senador republicano no solo ha dejado que eso ocurra, sino que ha cedido su responsabilidad constitucional. Le han regalado a Trump el poder de decidir cómo es que se gastan los recursos del país. Y bueno, para quienes me salgan en los comentarios defendiendo a Trump, diciendo que es parte de su estilo, que así se gobierna fuerte, hay que dejarlo claro. La fortaleza de un gobierno no se mide por cuánto poder se concentra en una persona, sino por cuánto se respeta las reglas y las instituciones que lo limitan. Un presidente que manipula el presupuesto para, por ejemplo, castigar universidades, para controlar empresas privadas, para reescribir la historia en museos, no está defendiendo tu nación, se está defendiendo a él mismo y a su permanencia en el poder. Esto no se trata de un debate técnico sobre economía, sobre burocracia, señores. Es una lucha por la esencia misma de la democracia. Si en estos próximos meses el Senado no recupera su papel, lo que se pierde no solo es un equilibrio institucional, es la capacidad del pueblo para que puedan decidir su propio destino. Pero bueno, ahora quiero saber qué opinan ustedes. ¿Creen que el Senado, que el Congreso, aún puede frenar este avance autoritario? ¿O será que ya hemos cruzado una línea de no retorno? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.